Hello, and welcome to Cutting Through. I'm Mitchell Plitnick. It's kind of an impromptu video tonight, but watching this one of many daily controversies blowing up, I just had to stop and talk to you guys about it a little bit. Um, this one's involving the former CNN anchor Don Lemon, um, who who was being interviewed by Wajahat Ali and got on the subject, of course, of ICE and immigration and everything there that was happening. And well, let me show you what he had to say.
Black people, brown people of all stripes, whether you're an Indian American or a Mexican American or whoever you are, go out in your place where you live and get a gun legally, get a license to carry legally. Because when you have people knocking on your door and taking you away without due process as a citizen, isn't that what the Second Amendment was written for? Go back and read what the Second Amendment says. And perhaps it will knock some sense in the heads of these people who are saying, well, it's all great. I don't believe they're doing it without due process. They're asking people for papers. They're not really beating people up. These people are doing things that are illegal. Nobody is illegal. It is a misdemeanor to cross the border.
So, a few things to say about this, but I think the most important is that the response from white people across social media has been absolutely hysterical. And I think it really shows, frankly, it shows what the whole gun rights movement is really all about. I mean, I think we can look at some of these comments. Let me see here. Um, So we can start here with your favorite and mine, Alex Jones, where he says that Don Lemon calls for black and brown people to buy guns and shoot ICE agents when they come to their door. Of course, Lemon said nothing of the kind. He said, get a license to carry legally because when you have people knocking on your door and taking you away without due process as a citizen, isn't that what the Second Amendment was written for? And then he closes with the Democrats' blatant incitement of civil war is now out in the open. I mean, the hypocrisy here is evident. And I don't think I need to point that out to anyone. But what I think is much more interesting is how this lays bare what the Second Amendment is really about to these people. Because one of the classic arguments they make for the Second Amendment being an individual right, which it never was intended to be. I mean, you just have to read the amendment itself. You can read the Federalist Papers and where it talks about that, but you just have to read the amendment itself to see that it was not meant to be an individual right. And certainly, it was not meant to suggest that people should have as many guns as they want with no, real limits. And yeah, but one of the arguments that amosexuals, as Ellie Mistel likes to call them, and I think it's a great word, like to use is that this is our protection against government tyranny. It's a bogus argument, and again, has nothing to do with why the Second Amendment was put into the Bill of Rights, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it's a pure bogus argument, and they expose themselves for what they really are concerned about with their hysteria. It the same way as, oh yes, we must have the right to bear arms in case the government wants to be tyrannical against us. But when they heard back in the 50s and 60s, black people wanted to arm themselves, whether it was the Nation of Islam, whether it was the Black Panthers, various different black independence and freedom fighting movements, some black separatist movements that were talking about the need to arm themselves, people went hysterical. And in fact, suddenly gun control was just a wonderful thing. Uh, I mean, we can also look here. Libs of TikTok, another one of our favorite right wing nuts. Don Lemon is now advocating for black and brown people to get guns so they can fight ICE agents while claiming that it's not illegal to cross the border. He didn't say that. He said it was a misdemeanor, which it is. But that's not let's get in the way of a good right-wing argument. He is encouraging violence and promoting lawlessness. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. When white people want guns, it's to defend their homes and their properties and their liberty, and make sure that the government can't come down on them. But when black people or brown people want guns, that's a threat. I mean, it is absolutely stunning how shamelessly this is being laid bare here. Here we have the Right Angle News Network, which has a following of about 311,000 on X. And they say, breaking, Republicans are now demanding Don Lemon be arrested for incitement of violence against federal agents after he told illegals, there's no such thing as illegals, these are people, um, after he told illegals to buy guns to defend themselves from ICE, a felony that would carry up to 5 years in prison for any normal person. I'm not sure how it is exactly that Don Lemon gets classified as an abnormal person here, but I gather, again, white people calling for unlimited guns is normal. A black person saying people should arm themselves because the government is in fact busting their doors down and rounding them up, and they should maybe watch out for that. The when that happens, that's abnormal, I gather. Now, I want to be clear here. First of all, Don Lemon's wrong about the Second Amendment. The well-regulated militia that the Second Amendment talked about was a militia of white people that was meant to make sure that the federal government could not come and take slaves away. That's what the Second Amendment was really about. It was making sure that slave states would be able to defend themselves by organizing their white citizens to make sure that they could hold on to their slaves in case the North, with their greater numbers and but I think a lot of the Southerners anticipated more control over the incoming federal government, might decide at sometime that slavery was no longer acceptable, that it wasn't okay to own human beings and work and rape them to death. Um, this is really what the Second Amendment was about. So Don Lemon is not correct in what he's saying as far as that goes. I would also say I don't agree with him. I don't think arming themselves is the answer. Great. You have a gun. ICE comes to your door. Let's say you shoot him, or let's say you even fire the gun in the air as a warning. You're going to die in a hail of bullets. There's no question about it. It's an ineffective response, and it's a self-defeating response. There has never been a realistic strategy where the citizenry arming itself against the vastly superior firepower of the federal government was going to end well for the citizenry. It's just not going to happen. Um, it is simply just it's an absurd response, and I know many people who do believe in this notion. Some of them are libertarians. Others, I would say, are leftists, who think, I don't think anyone's silly enough to believe that there would be an armed revolt and that the force of arms of the citizenry would somehow defeat the force of arms of the government. But they seem to believe that there is some advantage to doing that. I think they're dead wrong, literally dead wrong. I think if they try it, they will be dead wrong. Um, yeah, I think it's just numerous examples, plenty of people, um, especially black people who have guns, to protect themselves. They never stood a chance against the police. Um, so I think again that Don Lemon is wrong about that, but he is entitled to his opinion. He is entitled to that view, and he is entitled to say, buy guns legally to defend yourself against government tyranny, since that is the argument that Second Amendment homosexuals have been making, for the past bunch of decades, ever since they decided that they felt comfortable advocating for that much freedom of firearms, and felt safe enough that black people would never be able to get their hands on enough guns to really be that threatening, at least in the legal sense. Um, so I don't agree with him, but he certainly has a point. He has a point that if you're going to uh, if you're going to be vulnerable to the increasingly draconian and violent and dangerous tactics of ICE and of this authoritarian federal government that is sending, the military into major cities, I understand why people make the argument that citizens should arm themselves. And certainly, um, one cannot, on the one hand, say, "Oh, well, we should all have the Second Amendment right," which, again, this is not what the Second Amendment says. I strongly recommend both Elie Mystal, who I cited earlier, and also the book The Second. These will really, I think, inform you of where the Second Amendment comes from. But there, it is a fair point to make, and yet these people who are the first ones, literally the first ones. I mean, who would come before Alex Jones to talk about gun rights? I mean, if you can purchase a gun legally, and let's keep in mind, it would not be possible for an undocumented immigrant to buy a gun in this country legally. It would, although, you know, again, I should take that back. It is possible, but it's not supposed to be. Okay, you can't get a licensed firearm, but of course, you can go to gun shows and get, things of that nature, places where they're not going to do background checks and et cetera. Um, but this is clearly, the panic is all about black and brown people being armed. That's what this is really about. That the Second Amendment, according to these folks, is there for white people. These are the same people who, when a black man is shot in Louisiana because he informed the police that he had a gun in his car that he was licensed to carry and that it was in his glove compartment, and he got shot down, despite the fact that he was trying to cooperate with the police. Castile, I believe his name was. Um, none of those people were coming out and screaming, "What about the Second Amendment? What about the Second Amendment? Where were his gun rights?" Nobody was, because he's a black man. Okay, white people can have guns. Black people having guns scares the hell out of white people, and therefore white people want to get more guns, but they want to make sure that black people stay unarmed. And that's what Don Lemon really hit on. That's where Don Lemon really hit a nerve. And that's what caused this reaction. And I just thought it was really important because I think it's very illustrative, this response. And there are many of them. I gave you a few. There are so many all over social media. Just talking about, and of course they're tying it all into, look at how violent the left is, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, these are all people who talk about the need to have and argue that the Constitution gives them the right to have as much firepower as they can afford to buy. So, I mean, yeah, it's the hypocrisy, but it's more, I think, that we need to look at, just how it is that white people respond, on the one hand to white people with guns, and on the other hand to black and brown people with guns, in in both cases we're talking about um, law-abiding citizens. Because again, Don Lemon is telling citizens to get guns. He's not telling undocumented immigrants to get guns because they, for the most part, can't. Okay. He's talking about getting guns and licenses and going through the proper channels, which you can't do if you're an undocumented immigrant. So, I think uh I just felt the need to kind of put that out there and let people see, you know, just how it is, the contrast. And again, I do think it's important to remind folks, what Don Lemon is saying, though, about the Second Amendment is incorrect. Okay, this is not what the Second Amendment is about. And in fact, the Second Amendment, given its history, the reason for its existence, uh, should be, in my view, stricken from the Constitution. Um, and we should deal with guns in a regulatory manner. Guns are not a right. They certainly are not an individual right, nor does the Second Amendment say they are. This was a willful misreading by Antonin Scalia that overturned literally centuries of thinking on this subject. So, all right. I'm not going to get into that much farther, but I just thought it was, it was worth pointing out to folks. So, but again, I could debate Don Lemon about whether that his proposed solution is the right one, but he has absolutely got the right to propose it. And I think we need to take a good look and see. Let us watch and see if Don Lemon actually does end up facing charges, because uh, the the real assault is not about the Second Amendment; it's about the First, and um, that is what should allow Don Lemon to make these statements and not face any consequences from the government because of them. Let's see if that is still a valid assumption. So, thanks very much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I will be talking to you again soon.